And because you worked, I know that you have like very diverse businesses. You worked in esports, as you mentioned, and gaming and software development and marketing and sales and branding and PR and advertising and much more. I guess that you worked with very different kind of audiences or
Hmm.
clients. And I want to ask you, which one of them was the ones that you found more easy to work with, and and why are you covering so many different things? Like, what's inside you that you're doing so many things in, like, one after the other, which are so different? I'm very similar in that sense, so I'm interested to hear what is your view for doing that.
Well, I'll try to approach the second half of the question first. Um, both of my grandparents were entrepreneurs. My dad was an entrepreneur. I've always kind of been an entrepreneur. I did work in corporate early on, and that's how you grow and start your career. But after I would say 7 or 8 years after I graduated university, I had already had one or two little startups, and after that, I just said I'm not going to work for anyone else. It just for me, I wasn't raised that way, right? Because my family is entrepreneurs, and so I always did that, and I always had one to two business or three businesses at some points running at the same time, right? Because you don't know which one's really going to stick, right? And so, and you're learning. And so I would just see opportunities, and those opportunities came from basically people that I knew, identifying markets, identifying partners, and you work hard, and you see which ones work. I've had about 12 businesses in my life. Some of them lasted 3 months. I had, I don't know, three or four that lasted more than a decade, right? Some of them, like I was doing Screaming Box at one point, starting it. I had my esports business that was going full scale, and I had a marketing company at one point. So, I was very busy. I wasn't bored. Um,
For
but
sure.
some of those businesses were at different stages. So the esports one, the licenses were kind of near the end. Screenbox was just starting. So, there were different situations and different requirements. My marketing company has always kind of been in the background. And so, it works, right?
Yeah.
But I also like experimenting. So, I had a solar company. I learned all about the
Mhm.
solar market, but the solar market in many ways is similar to a manufacturing market, and it was really good. I went through an accelerator, and that was a B2C market, but it wasn't B2C like gaming, where it was very small products with lower volumes, or I mean lower prices but high volumes, right?
Right,
Solar
right.
industry was large products, very costly, low volumes, right? And very,
Yeah.
very different situation. You just learn from them, and you learn after you've had three or four or five or six businesses, you start understanding that the mechanics of a business are pretty much the same no matter what you're doing, right?
Hmm.
Basic
Yeah.
business mechanics, the basic sales, marketing, accounting, logistics, all that, distribution businesses, service businesses, manufacturing businesses. They have these different segments, but the mechanics of those things tend to work the same.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's happening or has happened over the last 10 years that I think is really interesting and really positive for entrepreneurs is that there's a lot of SaaS tools that have now come out, cloud-based tools that make it so 10 years ago it would take 10 people to start and run a company. Now you could do it with three, right?
Right. Right.
Because the tools allow for that, because business mechanics are all connected and they're very similar. And so a SaaS tool that works for a solar company would also probably work for a company that does makeup, right? And a lot of the market and sales tools, example, Amazon, right? It's a sales tool. It's a sales channel that you can use. You can access many markets with that sales channel, and the mechanics of using that sales channel are the same, right?
Right.
So a small startup now who's selling a product, they can enter 10 or 15 markets at the exact same time using one tool that, you might have to segment some of the marketing and do some localized language work, but that's something that a one person operation could do if they had to, right?
Right, right.
So
Okay, so I understand what you're saying. I think that for me it's a bit different because my parents were employees all their life, and I guess that most people have parents which were employees, and did not own a business. Um, but for me, the fact that I'm doing so many different things is always out of curiosity. I think
mhm.
it will be very boring for me to have one topic, one client, one project, one business. So that's the main reason for me. But
Well,
for me,
there
yeah.
there is a personality type who does entrepreneurship, right?
Mhm.
There are some people, they are much more comfortable working for a company, not having the responsibility of having to grow the food themselves, right? And
Right.
they're more comfortable just being a worker and being in a work environment. And that's great. Those people are very valuable, right? They're very valuable to businesses, to companies. Their place in society is very valuable and they're very needed, right? Entrepreneurs, they definitely need to have a different personality type, right? Curiosity is a main factor. uh Getting bored with one thing is kind of a main factor. Right, these are just characteristics that an
Yeah.
entrepreneur needs, because the skills to start a business are very different than the skills of having to go to work and be an employee, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
actually don't have those employee skills anymore. If somebody were to hire me
Me
to work
too.
in some corporate job, I would have to relearn those worker skills, right? Because
Yeah.
I've been an entrepreneur for 30 years now, right? So I'm used to, running a company, making decisions, being curious, trying to understand how everything works, figuring out how things connect to each other, right? And those are great personality traits for somebody starting and running a company. But for somebody to go work in a job that has a very narrow scope of work, those are really not great traits, right?
Right. Right.